Numbers don't lie. It's the first principle you learn in forensic accounting, the field I've dedicated the last 7 years of my life to. You follow the money, trace the patterns, uncover the discrepancies hidden beneath layers of plausible deniability. Numbers tell stories, often revealing truths people would rather keep buried. It's precise work, demanding meticulous attention to detail and a healthy dose of skepticism. It's a skill set that served me well professionally, building a successful career here in Chicago, affording me financial independence my family likely never anticipated for their difficult daughter. Ironically, it's also the skill set that recently led me to uncover a truth within my own family so ugly, so profoundly betraying, that it threatened to unravel my entire reality. My family, the Moreaus. On the surface, respectable, upper middle class. My father, Robert, a recently retired, comfortably passive literature professor. My mother, Catherine, sharp, socially adept, perpetually involved in charitable committees that seem to mostly involve lunches and subtle power plays. And then there's Ethan, my younger brother, the golden boy, the charming, perpetually finding himself artist, entrepreneur, whatever latest scheme he'd concocted, whose path through life was paved with parental funding and conveniently overlooked failures. I, Isabelle, Izzy to the few people I let close, was the other one, the intense one, the one who didn't quite fit the mold. While Ethan floated through expensive private schools, racking up debt for failed startups, a bespoke kombucha brewery, an artisanal dog biscuit delivery service, the list goes on, I worked my way through state university, fueled by scholarships, student loans I meticulously repaid, and a grim determination to build my own life, independent of their conditional support and constant comparisons. I learned early on that love in the Moreau household was transactional, approval directly correlated to how well you reflected their desired image. Ethan reflected it beautifully. I apparently did not. My financial independence, earned through long hours and genuine skill, became a source of friction. While Ethan still received hefty allowances well into his late 20s, any financial success I achieved was expected to be shared or at least available. Izzy, darling, Ethan's new sustainable pottery venture just needs a small capital injection to really take off. Mom would begin, her voice syrupy sweet. You're doing so well, surely you can help your brother out? My refusals were always met with guilt trips, accusations of selfishness, dramatic sighs about family loyalty. I learned to set boundaries, firm ones, but the pressure was constant. The unraveling began subtly, as financial discrepancies often do. Dad asked me to look over some documents related to the Dubois family trust, my maternal grandfather's legacy, established years ago. He claimed the trustees had sent confusing paperwork, and could my financial eye just glance at it? Knowing Dad's aversion to anything more complex than a utility bill, I agreed, assuming it was routine. The trust was meant to provide modest annual distributions to both my mother and her estranged sister, Geneviève Dubois, a successful lawyer Mom claimed had dramatically cut ties after a bitter argument years ago and moved out east. It was also meant to eventually pass assets to the grandchildren, Ethan and myself. As I dug into the statements and trustee reports Dad had forwarded, I noted, from Mom's email address, my forensic accountant senses immediately started tingling. The management fees paid out annually seemed exorbitantly high for a trust of its size and relative simplicity, and they weren't going to a standard financial institution. They were being paid to a vaguely named consulting LLC I didn't recognize. More digging revealed the LLC was registered to an address linked to one of Ethan's previous failed startups. Further tracing showed funds moving from that LLC into accounts Ethan controlled, often coinciding with his requests for startup capital that Mom claimed she and Dad were providing from their savings. But the most intriguing part? Smaller, regular payments were also being routed from the trust discreetly to a law firm in Chicago, not D.C., where Mom always implied Aunt Genevieve lived after cutting ties. A quick search confirmed the firm, Dubois and Associates, principal partner Geneviève Dubois. My supposedly estranged aunt wasn't estranged, and she was seemingly receiving payments from the very trust my mother controlled, while my mother simultaneously claimed Aunt Genevieve was practically dead to her. The numbers weren't just sloppy, they smelled like active mismanagement, potentially embezzlement, orchestrated by my mother to siphon funds meant for both beneficiaries, herself and Genevieve, primarily towards Ethan, while using hidden payments to keep Genevieve quiet or complicit. And my father? His signature was on the trustee reports, likely signed blindly wherever Catherine told him to. I felt a cold dread mixed with a familiar, weary anger. How deep did this go? I spent a week discreetly gathering more data, cross-referencing, building a preliminary file. Then I decided on a cautious approach. I called my parents. Mom, Dad, I began, keeping my voice light over speakerphone. I was reviewing those Dubois trust documents you sent over. Just had a quick question about the management fees listed. They seem quite high, going to an LLC I wasn't familiar with. And I also noticed some recurring payments to a law firm here in Chicago. The reaction was immediate and telling. Silence first. Then Mom's voice, sharp, defensive. Isabelle, why are you digging into that? It's complex trust management, dear. Nothing for you to worry about. Robert handles it. Actually, Dad mumbled uncomfortably, your mother handles most of the communication with the trustees. It's perfectly standard. Mom cut him off. That law firm likely provides necessary administrative services. Don't be difficult, Isabelle. You always have to question everything. I'm a forensic accountant, Mom, I replied evenly. Questioning financial irregularities is my job. These payments warrant clarification. There's nothing to clarify, she snapped. Stop snooping into family matters that don't concern you. You're just trying to cause trouble because you resent helping Ethan. Click. She hung up. Her defensive fury was practically an admission of guilt. I knew I'd hit a nerve. I also knew this wasn't over. They wouldn't just let this go. 2 weeks later, my assumption proved terrifyingly correct. I was at my office finalizing a complex fraud report for a major client when my assistant buzzed through, her voice hesitant. Izzy, there's, someone here to see you? A process server? My blood ran cold. A process server? For what? I walked out to the reception area. A man in a cheap suit offered a tight, unpleasant smile. Isabelle Moreau? I nodded numbly. You've been served. He handed me a thick legal envelope and walked away. Back in my office, hands trembling, I tore it open. The heading leaped out at me, petition for conservatorship. I sank into my chair, the words blurring. Petitioner, Catherine Moreau and Robert Moreau. Respondent, Isabelle Moreau. I scanned the claims, my stomach twisting into knots. Respondent has exhibited increasingly erratic and paranoid behavior, demonstrates poor judgment regarding personal and financial affairs, exhibits potential hoarding tendencies. My meticulous record-keeping, likely. Suffers from delusions regarding family finances, displays emotional instability requiring intervention, isolation from concerned family members. My setting boundaries. Therefore, petitioners request the court appoint them as conservators of the person and estate of Isabelle Moreau to protect her well-being and assets. It was breathtaking, vicious, a complete fabrication designed to paint me as mentally incompetent. This wasn't just about stopping my questions regarding the trust fund. This was retaliation. This was an attempt to silence me permanently, discredit me professionally, and seize control of my finances, my life, before I could expose their fraud. The shock lasted only a moment, quickly replaced by a surge of ice-cold fury unlike anything I'd ever felt. They thought they could do this? After years of using me, dismissing me, lying to me? They thought they could label me incompetent to cover their own crimes? They picked the wrong fight. They picked the wrong daughter. They forgot what I do for a living. I don't just find financial irregularities, I dismantle fraudulent systems, and they had just handed me the blueprint to theirs. My first call wasn't to just any lawyer. I pulled up the contact information I'd carefully saved after my initial trust fund investigation. Dubois and Associates, Chicago. Genevieve Dubois, my estranged aunt. The one my mother tried to erase. It was time for a family reunion of a different kind. The petition for conservatorship felt like ice water thrown in my face, a shocking escalation designed to silence and control. But after the initial wave of disbelief and nausea receded, something else took its place. The cold, sharp focus of a forensic accountant smelling fraud. They thought they could label me incompetent? They had no idea the meticulously documented case I'd been unknowingly building against them my whole life, stored not just in memory, but in encrypted files and backed up hard drives. My first call wasn't to my parents or my useless brother Ethan. It was to the Chicago law firm Dubois and Associates. My hand trembled slightly as I dialed the number I'd found, linked to those suspicious trust fund payments. "I'd like to schedule a consultation with Genevieve Dubois," I stated, keeping my voice steady. "It pertains to a sensitive family matter involving the Dubois Family Trust and a Moreau conservatorship filing." The receptionist's professional tone shifted almost imperceptibly. "One moment, please." After a brief hold, she came back. "Ms. Dubois can see you tomorrow morning at 10. Please bring all relevant documentation." Walking into the imposing downtown offices of Dubois and Associates the next day felt like stepping onto charged ground. Genevieve Dubois met me in the reception area herself. She was likely in her early 60s, impeccably dressed in a sharp navy suit, her silver hair pulled back severely, revealing intelligent, assessing eyes that were startlingly familiar. A slightly older, sterner version of the eyes that looked back at me from my own mirror. There was no warmth in her initial greeting, only keen scrutiny. "Ms. Moreau," she said, her voice crisp, extending a hand. "Genevieve Dubois, please come in." Her office was elegant, commanding, lined with law books and understated art. She gestured for me to sit, then closed the door firmly behind us. "My receptionist mentioned a conservatorship filing in the Dubois Trust," she began, getting straight to the point. "And my sister, Catherine Moreau." "Explain." I took a deep breath and laid it all out. The history of being the family scapegoat. The constant financial drain supporting Ethan's failures. My recent discovery of the trust fund anomalies. The excessive fees. The Shell LLC linked to Ethan. The hidden payments to her firm. My parents' hostile reaction when I questioned it. And finally, the petition for conservatorship, served just days after my inquiry, filled with baseless accusations of incompetence. I handed her the petition. Genevieve read it quickly, her expression unreadable at first. Then, a flicker of something, angry recognition, tightened her jaw. She looked up at me, her gaze sharp. "Catherine," she said, the name tasting like acid. "This has her fingerprints all over it. Retaliation disguised as concern. Standard operating procedure." "You know about the trust irregularities?" I asked. She gave a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, I know Catherine has been playing fast and loose with Grandpa Dubois' legacy for years. Those payments to my firm? Guilt money, most likely. After our father died, Catherine became sole trustee. There was a disagreement about how the funds should be managed, about certain discrepancies even back then, about her insistence on cutting me out of family matters. She claimed I was the greedy one, the troublemaker, painted me as unstable to Robert and the rest of the family. Eventually, Genevieve's voice turned cold. It became easier to accept the periodic hush money she sent via the trust than to constantly fight her manipulations. Until now, she leaned forward. But this conservatorship, this is a new level of desperation. She must be terrified of what you found in those trust documents. She paused, studying my face intently. "There's something else, Isabelle. Something Catherine worked very hard to bury, something tied to that trust." My breath hitched. "What?" "Your paternity," Genevieve said quietly. "There were always whispers, rumors within the Dubois family. Catherine had a brief, intense relationship with my older brother, Michael Dubois, shortly before she married Robert Moreau. Michael died tragically in a hiking accident before you were born." She hesitated. "The timing was always suspect. And Catherine was adamant about quickly changing your birth certificate after Grandpa Dubois passed, ensuring you were legally Robert Moreau's daughter, securing your place within their family line, and, crucially, solidifying her control over certain aspects of the Dubois Trust meant for all grandchildren. My mind reeled. Not Robert Moreau's daughter. My entire identity felt like it was fracturing. It explained so much: the distance, the feeling of never quite belonging, Catherine's constant need to control me. We can do a discrete DNA comparison, Genevieve said gently, seeing the shock on my face. I have access to samples from Michael's estate files. If Robert isn't your biological father, their standing to even file for conservatorship based on parental concern becomes legally questionable, adding another layer to our defense. Will you help me, Genevieve? I asked, my voice trembling slightly now. Represent me? Her eyes, so like mine, met my gaze with fierce determination. Help you? Isabelle, I'm going to help you dismantle Catherine's house of cards, brick by painstaking brick. She picked a fight with the wrong niece and the wrong sister. An alliance was forged, not just on legal strategy, but on decades of shared experience with Catherine Moreau's manipulative tactics. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of focused activity. I threw myself into the financial investigation. My forensic accounting skills finally turned towards my own family's tangled ledger. With Genevieve navigating the legal channels to gain broader access, I traced the flow of money from the Dubois Trust. The pattern was clear. Catherine, as trustee, had systematically inflated fees, funneled funds through Ethan's Shell LLC, disguised personal expenses as trust administration costs, and consistently shorted Genevieve's rightful distribution while ensuring Ethan's ventures were always flush. Robert's signature passively rubber-stamped every questionable transaction. The fraud was blatant, meticulous, and ran into the hundreds of thousands over the years. Meanwhile, Genevieve arranged the DNA comparison. The results came back confirming her suspicions. Robert Moreau was not my biological father. The probability pointed overwhelmingly towards Michael Dubois. My world tilted again, but this time, it felt less like fracturing and more like clarification. A piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Genevieve also suggested contacting Chloe Dubois, Ethan's ex-girlfriend, who happened to be Genevieve's distant cousin. Chloe saw Ethan and Catherine up close during their relationship, Genevieve explained. She might have insights, maybe even proof of their mindset. I met Chloe for coffee. She was wary at first, burned by her experience with Ethan. He used me for contacts and then ghosted, she admitted bitterly. But when I explained the conservatorship attempt and the financial investigation, her caution turned to cold anger. That sounds exactly like Catherine, she spat. She controlled everything, told Ethan what to say, how to act, how to get money out of you and Robert. Chloe then revealed she still had saved voicemails and texts from Catherine, coaching Ethan on how to manipulate me, complaining about my interference, even admitting to managing the trust creatively to support Ethan's potential. Chloe readily agreed to provide a sworn statement and copies of the messages. Catherine Moreau needs to be stopped, she said fiercely. My friend Alex helped me organize the mountain of evidence, the forensic accounting reports detailing the fraud, the DNA results, Chloe's damning testimony and messages, my own archive of Catherine's manipulative emails, and Ethan's demanding texts. Seeing it all laid out, the clear pattern of abuse, control, and financial exploitation was both horrifying and validating. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was a target. Genevieve reviewed the complete file, a grim satisfaction in her eyes. Catherine played a long game, she murmured, but she made one critical mistake. She underestimated you. And she definitely underestimated your access to me. She drafted a powerful counter-response to the conservatorship petition, not only refuting their claims with medical records, employment verification, and psychological evaluations, which I readily agreed to, but also attaching key exhibits. The financial audit summary, Chloe's affidavit, hints of the paternity discrepancy. This, Genevieve said, holding up the filed response, is not just a defense, Isabelle. It's an opening salvo. Let's see how they react when they realize the target isn't just going to lie down. And she's got spreadsheets and a very good lawyer. We were ready for the hearing. The fear I'd felt initially was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They had tried to declare me unfit, to steal my autonomy, to erase my identity. They had no idea the forensic audit about to be performed on their entire lives. The reckoning was coming. The air in the Chicago courtroom was stale, thick with the scent of old paper and simmering resentment. I sat beside Genevieve Dubois, my aunt, my lawyer, my unexpected ally. Across the aisle sat my family, Catherine, Robert, Ethan, flanked by their increasingly anxious-looking attorney. Catherine wore a mask of strained composure. Robert stared fixedly at his hands, and Ethan fidgeted, unable to meet my gaze. They looked smaller under the harsh fluorescent lights, stripped of their usual imposing self-assurance. Their lawyer presented the case for conservatorship first. It was flimsy, built on half-truths and deliberate misinterpretations. He painted me as emotionally volatile, citing instances where I'd set boundaries, refusal to engage with family, my demanding career as evidence of obsession, fixation on work to the detriment of personal well-being, and my lack of communication following my discovery of the trust issues as paranoid isolation. He even twisted my independent financial success into recklessness, suggesting my refusal to endlessly fund Ethan proved my poor judgment. Ethan took the stand, delivering a coached performance about my supposed outbursts and instability, conveniently omitting the context of his incessant demands for money. Catherine followed, tears welling on cue as she spoke of her deep, motherly concern for my welfare, her voice trembling with feigned vulnerability. It was a masterclass in gaslighting, designed to paint me as unhinged, incapable, needing their protection. Then, it was Genevieve's turn. Calm, precise, devastating. Her cross-examination dismantled their narrative piece by piece. She questioned Ethan about his multiple failed startups, forcing him to admit the significant sums I had provided over the years, producing bank records I'd given her. She questioned Catherine about the Dubois Trust, probing the exorbitant management fees paid to Ethan's Shell LLC, highlighting the dates correlating with Ethan's lavish expenditures. Catherine became flustered, contradicting herself, resorting to blaming complex investments. Genevieve questioned Robert about his role as co-signer on trustee reports filled with anomalies, forcing him to admit he rarely read what Catherine put in front of him. Their carefully constructed image of concerned parents began to crumble under the weight of documented facts. When it was our turn to present, Genevieve didn't rely on emotional appeals. She relied on data, my language. First, she submitted my recent voluntary psychological evaluation. Findings: high functioning, no signs of incompetence, stress levels consistent with dealing with a difficult family situation. Then, my detailed employment records and financial statements, demonstrating years of professional success and responsible financial management. Then came the core evidence. Your Honor, Genevieve addressed the judge, we now present evidence pertaining to the management of the Dubois Family Trust, which we believe provides critical context for the petitioner's motivations. I took the stand briefly, not as the respondent, but as the forensic accountant who had analyzed the trust. I presented my findings calmly, methodically, using charts and transaction summaries projected onto the courtroom screen. I detailed the flow of funds, the inflated fees, the transfers to Ethan's shell company, the missing distributions owed to Genevieve, the dates aligning perfectly with Ethan's financial demands, and Catherine's claims of needing to help him out from her own non-existent savings. I demonstrated, through clear financial forensics, a systematic pattern of mismanagement and likely embezzlement orchestrated by Catherine Moreau, the trustee, primarily benefiting her son, Ethan Moreau. The courtroom was silent as I stepped down. Catherine was white-faced, glaring daggers at me. Ethan looked physically ill. Robert stared blankly ahead. Next, Genevieve called Chloe Dubois to the stand. Chloe, nervous but resolute, recounted Catherine's manipulations, her constant pressure on Ethan, her dismissive attitude towards me. Crucially, Genevieve played authenticated recordings Chloe had provided. Catherine coaching Ethan on how to ask me for money, Catherine admitting to Chloe she was creatively managing the trust to ensure Ethan got his rightful share before Izzy caused problems, Catherine bad-mouthing me and dismissing Robert's concerns. Hearing my mother's manipulative words echoed in the stark reality of the courtroom was chilling, but deeply validating. Finally, Genevieve addressed the elephant in the room, not as a primary claim, but as further evidence of Catherine Moreau's long history of deceit for control. Your Honor, we also submit certified copies of Ms. Isabelle Moreau's original birth certificate, alongside the altered version filed in 1995 after the death of Ms. Genevieve Dubois' brother, Michael Dubois. Coupled with recent DNA analysis results, she placed the sealed report on the judge's bench. This evidence strongly suggests a deliberate, long-term falsification of records by Catherine Moreau, potentially to secure Ms. Moreau's legal standing within the Moreau family line and maintain control over assets linked to the Dubois Trust. Catherine let out a strangled gasp. Robert looked utterly devastated, finally comprehending the depth of his wife's deception over decades. Ethan just looked lost. Their lawyer offered a weak rebuttal, attempting to dismiss the evidence as irrelevant family disputes or misunderstandings. It was futile. The judge's ruling, delivered after a brief recess, was swift and brutal. The petition for conservatorship is hereby denied, with prejudice, she stated firmly, her gaze sweeping over my parents and brother. The court finds absolutely no evidence to support the claims of incompetence against the respondent, Ms. Isabelle Moreau. Instead, the evidence presented raises serious concerns regarding potential financial malfeasance, perjury, and manipulation on the part of the petitioners. She paused, letting the words sink in. Therefore, this court is referring the matter of the Dubois Family Trust Management, along with the evidence regarding the birth certificate alteration and related testimonies, to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office for potential criminal investigation. A collective intake of breath filled the room. Criminal investigation. Catherine swayed on her feet, supported by a stunned Ethan. Robert buried his face in his hands. Court adjourned, the judge declared, banging her gavel. As people began to file out, Catherine lunged towards me, her face contorted with rage. You did this! You ruined us! Genevieve stepped smoothly between us. Catherine, she said, her voice dangerously quiet, I suggest you consult with your attorney. Immediately. Catherine recoiled, defeated, and was steered out of the courtroom by a shell-shocked Robert and Ethan. Leaving the courthouse with Genevieve and Alex, I felt drained, but strangely light. Justice, cold and impartial, had finally prevailed. The fallout was immediate. Catherine was asked to step down from her charity boards pending investigation. Ethan's remaining investors pulled out. Robert faced questions from his former university colleagues. Their social standing evaporated overnight. I didn't follow the criminal investigation closely. That was the state's business now. My focus was on rebuilding. I legally changed my surname to Dubois, honoring the aunt who stood by me and the father I never knew. Genevieve and I worked together to ensure the Dubois Trust was properly managed going forward, benefiting both myself and the charitable causes my grandfather Dubois intended. Chloe and I formed a tentative, supportive friendship, united by our shared experience. My work as a forensic accountant took on new meaning. I started volunteering my time, offering pro bono consultations to nonprofits that helped victims of elder financial abuse and complex family fraud. Turning my skills towards helping others heal from the kind of betrayal I experienced felt like the most meaningful way to reclaim my own narrative. My parents and brother, we remain estranged. There have been no further apologies, only silence. That's okay. I found my real family in Genevieve, in Alex, in Chloe, in the colleagues who respect my work, in the clients I now help. Peace isn't always about forgiveness or reconciliation. Sometimes it's about recognizing the truth, setting boundaries, and building a future based on integrity, far away from the wreckage of the past. And that's exactly what I intend to do.